Okay, welcome everyone who is joining us to this OASIS conference. And well, I will introduce to this panel description. I think it's wonderful. You have a glimpse to what we are talking about, and we're discovering the links between video games and emotions have been little explored. If we understand video games as a system, then we should also think of them as an affective system. For the medium to really mature and evolving, then we must include in the conversation the role that emotions, bodies, and affection play both in the designing process and in the playing experience. The panel will explore different ways of approaching the subject of affecting and video game. We will discuss how we can create designing processes that are about emotions and feelings. We will explore the possibilities that feelings such as nostalgia, friendship, romance, or even grief can have in the play experience, or the different types of love that can be found beside the romantic. We will talk about non-traditional game design dynamics based on everyday actions such as hug, and we will also dive into the importance that a renovated and critical approach of affect theory can be key to a feminist and queer revisionist of the history of games, and at the same time allow us to lay the foundations for a new way of processing and experiencing the stories and games. So let me introduce you to everyone who will share this time with me and everyone who is watching us through YouTube. So the thing is, we will start with Audrey, Anable, Juan de la Torre, Lindsay Grace, and Marina, Diez. So feel free to have time to introduce yourself to our audience. And if you are up to share any PPT or whatever, also feel free to do it. To me, it's a big pleasure, as I mentioned, to have you here. Thank you very much.
So I believe I'm going first. Is that right, Sergio?
That's it. Sorry, it was my fault.
So my name is Audrey Anable. Let me share my screen and then I'll tell you a bit about myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I may be the only person on this panel who doesn't design games at all. So I'm a scholar of digital media and basically a scholar of visual culture. And most of my work has focused on how computers have changed our visual landscape over the past 60 or so years. And my work most recently, or at least in the last about 10 years, has been primarily focused on video games. I wrote a book that came out a few years ago called Video Games and Affect. You have a shot here from the cover. And in this book, I was interested in expanding the language we have for talking both about video games as an art form, but I was also quite interested in a sort of intellectual history of how affect theory, basically this kind of theory of the social and mediated aspect of our emotions, how that theory historically overlaps with the emergence of computers. So really thinking about how computerized networked art forms have influenced the way we think about emotions too, and also I think the way we feel things. So these are my real interests in this book. I'm not going to give you a whole rundown of the book here. I'm going to try to keep this very brief because I'm really interested to hear what the rest of the panelists have to say about their own game design. But I want to just say a bit about this idea of affect and how I think about it in relationship to video games. So affect for me is a concept that allows us to think about emotion beyond the boundaries of the body. So thinking about, I'm very interested in emotions, but I'm not necessarily thinking about emotions as personal belongings, right? I'm more interested in how the way we think we are feeling or the way we are feeling is always part of a larger system. And as a media scholar, I'm also very interested in then how those feelings that are social and bigger than ourselves get mediated, right? Like how I teach in a film studies program, so I'm also very interested in older and more conventional forms of media. But when it comes to video games for me are a really interesting, effective system, right? A system through which emotions can circulate through communities, right? And through bodies and across networks. So I'm not going to say much about the kind of scholarly influences here, but I've listed a few names of people that I'm thinking alongside when I think about this concept of affect. So for me, and one of the big points that I try to make in my work is that I think that video games are the medium that can best give expression to the way it feels to live our lives through computers, basically. And what this means to me is it's a bit of that piece I was talking about the historical relationship between theories of emotions and the networked computational systems and forms that came to inform both those theories, but also the way we live our lives, right? So it's really hard to even like tease these apart. I think they're intimately related, and that really fascinates me. And then when I think about video games, I think about them as this potential space for basically accessing a more kind of playful and fantastical relationship to what it feels like to live in the present, right? So I'll give you a brief example. You know, I in my book, I write a lot about games that we play on our phones. So casual games that often get, I think, or at least when I was first doing this work, games that were overlooked by game critics, game scholars. So I'm thinking here of something as banal as like Candy Crush Saga, right? So I'm really interested in like thinking about these moments and when we play these games, like liminal moments, waiting for the metro, right? Waiting for a bus, when we pull out our phone and take a little break. But I'm also interested in the design aspects, like the way in which something like as simple as the interface design of a game like Candy Crush Saga is this fantastical and playful re-articulation of the interface of the iPhone, right? And all the kinds of neoliberal kind of measurement, stressful, anxiety-producing things that many of these apps contain on our phones are for a moment obscured by the interface of the game and turned into a different set of feelings, right? And not necessarily all positive, right? So this is the final point I'll make before just sort of ending my brief remarks about video games and emotion. I'm really interested in getting beyond just thinking about games as associated with happiness or fun or pleasure or positive emotions, right? I'm really interested in thinking about how video games are full of really complex and sometimes really banal emotions too that are important. And as I continue to work in this vein, I really want to think about how game designers, I think more and more, are really interested in troubling notions of pleasure or simple pleasure in games, and getting players, right, to feel things beyond like mastery or control or agency or freedom, right? And I think this is an important development in this important art form. So I'll stop there. And I hope that we can explore some of these things, during the question period, but thanks.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Audrey. I didn't mention at the beginning, but you talk about yourself as associate lecturer of cinematographic studies at Carleton, Canada University, also member of the Fembot Collective and advisory editor for the journal Camera Oscura. And you are also interested in supervising graduate students, postdoc in digital media history and aesthetics, game study, virtual reality, media and effect, and queer and feminist theory. So it's just a big picture of yourself that I think it's a good one. I lovely the book that you have already written and the perspective in the casual gaming. That is, I think that everyone right now is a gamer, and you don't know even that you are playing video games everywhere right now, even if you are waiting the bus or at a train station. So, well, thank you, Audrey. As you talk, we will dive into the questions afterwards and see if anyone else also have a different opinion. So, I think it's the turn of Juan de la Torre.
Yeah, sure. Hey, hello everyone.
How are you? So
I'm good. I'm good. I think you might be able to share my screen because I cannot do it.
Absolutely. Well, in fact,
I'm useless.
In the meantime that I'm sharing my screen, I will tell that Juan, you were at ESNE yesterday, so you.
Oh yeah, I was there.
You have the chance to visit OASIS. In fact, so
yes.
I'm so happy if you share with our audiences your experience here. In the meantime that I'm sharing this, it takes time.
Yeah. Well, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I think I've never seen an expo like that in a university space, and it was lovely to see. Like there's many games that I didn't even know about. That speaks badly about my job, but yeah, it was really good. It was really good. So if anyone is on YouTube and is in Madrid and has time of the weekend, maybe it's a good plan to go there and just play games, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, you as a former student and also you have a solo exposed. So, well, feel free. It's your turn.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm afraid that my career has been a bit more boring and straightforward than the rest of the panelists who, since I've been digging around a bit, seem to be really, really, again, interesting. I started a company like almost 10 years ago when I was a student back in ESNE, like I assume some people of the audience. It was called Team Gotham. I was a co-founder, art director, game designer, blah, blah, blah. You name it. When you are just 4 people, 5 people, you have to do all the things, right? I'm very sure Marina knows that as well. Yeah, during our journey, we made a couple of games. The first one, if you can pass to the next slide, was actually our final degree project. It was a really humble, really, really classic, like adventure, like a thriller, escape roomy thing. We were only 4 people that was studying game design and 3D art and all that, but we didn't really know what we were doing, and that's just being honest. So we made the smallest game possible that looked good enough, and well, it kind of worked, and it was okay enough to help us make the second one, which is which is solo, as you mentioned, Sergio, which is writing the exposition, and I'm really exposition. How do you say that in English? Exhibition, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's just right there.
That's Juan is the
Sorry,
video game exhibition is a
exhibition, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So all those efforts, lead us to make this game, which is a game that I'm very, attached to. I think. I don't know. It was a hard time making it. It's a game about an introspective puzzle adventure. That's how I like to call it. You're a sailor that explores a bunch of islands, like an archipelago, wondering about relationships, romance relationships, right? I I I started making this game after a breakup, and I was like 22, 23 years old, I think, and I didn't understand much of what's going on in my life, both emotionally and financially and personally, everything. I keep not knowing anything about life, but at that time I decided to put all those questions I had into a game, and we created this kind of like dreamy archipelago, which is trying to reflect like the player's mind, and somehow is like a safe space. It's like a safe garden for you to play with animals, to water the plants, and to just sit on a bench and think about stuff, while the game puts you into a position where it asks you questions directly, breaking the fourth wall, about how do you perceive love with a partner if you have it, or just love as a general thing if you don't have a partner. Yeah, after that, well, the game didn't really work, so we sold 0 copies, and we had to shut down the company. um, so I moved on, and I had a hard time with that. I spent like a couple of years being super pissed about it and sad and raging about it. I almost quit games, but I decided to just move on and do different things within the industry. So I moved into Brainwash Gang, which is another company based here in Madrid, and change all the creative things that I was doing for a more boring stuff as business developer and public relations. And then from that moment onwards, I've been, focusing my career on that front. That's why I said that my perspective is going to be much more boring than the others. And yeah, I think you can go directly to the end of the presentation already. I've been, getting myself involved in different events, like Game Dev World, or the Burger Developer Central Collective here in Spain. And now I'm working at a publishing company called Evolver Digital as a producer. I still very much in touch with games every day, and I very much love them. And I try to put all the things that I learned making my own games and all the emotions I felt while making them into the games that I work and to the developers I work with. I think that's pretty much it. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Cool.
a very.
Thank you.
Now you're welcome, Juan. It's a lovely career. You have to love yourself as well.
I know, I love myself. It's just that it's more boring.
No.
I mean, being a producer is no fun.
No, I will tell that the people is loving solo right now. I think it's one of the
Nice.
it's one of the games that the people are playing the most here.
Amazing.
So that's amazing. Yes, just
Yeah,
for
it really is.
yeah, absolutely. Because 0 copies at that time, perhaps the edition or the target was not able or prepared to that kind of game.
Yeah. I think I would love to talk about that with the panelists. Like the fact that is the audience prepared to feel emotions through games, like strong emotions, or do they actually want that? I think it's interesting.
Question.
Like,
Yeah, it's a good question
yeah.
to answer afterwards.
Sometimes I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about anything. So.
Yeah, me either. Thank you, Juan. So, well, now it's time for Lindsay Grace. Thank you so much for being here. I know that it's early there. So,
Excellent, no problem. I'm assuming you can hear me okay.
yeah,
I tend
absolutely.
to speak very quickly, so I'm going to try and slow myself down. In short, I'm Lindsay Grace. I'm a professor, game designer, developer, artist, and author. I'm Knight Chair at the University of Miami, where I also direct the MFA in Interactive Media. And I'll just give you a quick overview of me and how I relate to this topic. So I've actually founded 2 academic game studios, one at American University and another at Miami University of Ohio. And I've produced more than 30 solo indie games in my career as a designer, developer, and artist on a bunch of solo projects as well. I've also written more than 75 book chapters, articles, papers, etc., primarily focused on the intersection of games and society, and in particularly game design and society. So everything from social impact to topics around trying to improve educational experiences, change affect, etc. Most, I think, germane to this conversation are my last 3 books. So Doing Things with Games, Social Impact Through Play with Routledge CRC is largely about social impact through play. And in that book, I basically I talk about how we design experiences that sort of permeate and persist beyond the simple play experience. So primarily what we sort of call persuasive play or social impact games. And then last year, I produced a book as editor and author called Black Game Studies. It's really about the African diaspora and the games of the community. And then I think most germane to this conversation, I edited and wrote several chapters for a book called Love and Electronic Affection, which is about some of the design strategies. I particularly focus on what we call sort of game verb based design. But it's also a kind of analysis of our history, which I'd argue is an immature history in producing love and affection within games. I think that the medium itself has been, I think sort of its growth has been stunted by a misunderstanding of play as something that's juvenile and not letting us mature it. And then when we add in the repeated history of censoring it and making it simpler than it needs to be, I think what we do is we actually prevent the medium from reaching its potential. I also serve on executive boards and organize or help organize events like Indiecade Horizons, and I serve on the board for the Higher Education Video Game Alliance, which is largely focused on trying to improve globally game education at the higher ed level. I've also served, and this will help you understand some of my game design perspective. I served as vice president of the Global Game Jam, which is the largest community of jammers in the world. And I like to employ that practice in my own games. I really like to try and build things quickly and densely. I've also curated or co-curated more than 10 exhibits around the world. I think the most sort of exciting and interesting one is Sam Arcade, which is the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Helped organize that for 3 years. And that got up to about 14, 15,000 people. But also done things in Scotland, small scale, large scale. In this domain, several years ago, back in, I'd say probably around 2013, I did a 1-hour talk for GDC about affection games in the mobile space in particular. I had a lot of concerns about how the relationship between people and emotions was being portrayed in these games. And then last year, or actually this year, in GDC 2022, I kind of revisited that and talked about love, affection, and relationships in design and how they may have matured. And really what I'm interested in is trying to help people understand how we design the experience of love. And it's really, for me, about the things that we do in these games. And one of the, I think the best ways to frame it, and this is often how I describe this, is if we think about the other mediums, it's that readers read a book, audiences watch a film, and players do. So I'm interested in what we're doing in this space, what we're encouraging people as players to do in the relationship to love, or how we portray love, and how they work through love. So when I talk about love and affection in games, what I'm always concerned about is these sort of shortcuts where we've got ridiculous things like romance buttons. And really the game verb is, you know, if you can name it and it's just a button, it's not really that effective. Or when we try to quantify relationships and give someone a score on the quality of that relationship, it's a really immature and not very well developed understanding. Because obviously we're more than input and output. And so when I made this game, wow, it's like probably a decade ago, called Big Huggin', where you basically hug this giant teddy bear. It's really sort of charming, and I'm trying to get people to recognize that the sort of the effective activity of hugging a giant teddy bear is actually a way of solving problems instead of just killing everything that's in your way or squashing it or whatever. And so one of the best examples that I can think of in sort of contemporary game space that does this well is if you look at Florence, what it does, a lot of what I was trying to communicate in the books and in my design, which is it's trying to help people understand the journey of love. And it does it with all these little activities, the sort of like the talking and how we would sort of talk through things, the learning about someone, and the sort of analogy to a puzzle piece, the spending time just with these basic activities like brushing your teeth. And then it kind of concocts from all these little actions a way of saying to love is to learn, spend time, all these other basic activities. And so really, when I think about this, I'm really just interested in trying to do better things with love and affection. And I'm happy to answer questions, but I think that was probably 30 slides in very little time. So happy to chat with everyone. Thanks.
Come on, Lindsay, it was so a great presentation. So happy to hear you because the topic, the love, it's one of the main topics right now in our society, not just in video. I think we are. I don't know if it's good to say that we have a lack of love in our society, and how we can, you know, move that into video games, because the people, I think that the love is something that is misunderstood in somehow, as you mentioned. So happy to hear you and know that your thoughts about this. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So move on to Marina, Diez. Marina.
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
So nice
hello.
to be here. I'm gonna share my screen 1 second. Here.
Yeah. You are at the airport right now.
I'm at the airport, so
Yeah.
sorry about that. I hope it's not
No,
very noisy, but
come
it's
on.
funny at least.
Thank you so much for being here. So
Thank you so much for inviting me. Nice. So I'm gonna talk about what I do, emotional game design. A little bit about me. I'm an emotional game designer, and I'm recently also became a filmmaker. I'm the CEO of my own company, Three of Cups Games, based in the UK, but we are people from many different countries in Europe. I'm the lead game designer of a game called Dordogne by a studio called Studios. And I'm also an emotional game designer on an unannounced project for a company in Germany called BTF. So basically, how did I decide that I wanted to do emotional game design? So I finished my master's degree in game design in Brunel University, London, 3 years ago now. And when I finished, I had some experience making video games. I knew that I needed to kind of start making little pieces before applying to any job, because that's what everyone told you. So that's what I started doing before starting my master. And basically after that, when I graduated, I started applying for jobs, but no one hired me because I didn't have like real experience in studios. So that was an issue. It was really frustrating. It was a really difficult time. So I was at the same time doing my final project for my master, and it's that moment when I thought that I wanted to do emotional game design. I call it like that, but it's not something that I invented or anything. Many other people before me were doing emotional game design. It's just that I think we didn't call it emotional game design properly before, especially because game design started being something pretty much logical and from people coming from engineering and science backgrounds traditionally. So things called emotional game design didn't make sense before, I guess. So I kind of started finding this niche for myself in order to promote what I love doing, that it was kind of a mix between game feel emotions, and UX and game design. So that's how I started my career a little bit, and it evolved like that. And I'm quite happy because I'm actually working on what I love doing the most. So next step, what is actually emotional game design from my perspective, of course. The first time that I kind of was conscious when I was exploring about other titles that could be like potential game design, emotional game design candidates. This is one of the images that impact me the most. That is the game Ico by the developer Fumito Ueda. This game is almost now, like I think almost 20 years ago released, and it impacted me so much to see this gesture, like two characters holding hands. And actually, no spoilers, but if you didn't play the game, but the whole game is about kind of bringing your character in the hand. So this for me was a very kind of like a very impactful thing. I never saw anything like that before, and I thought that it was really kind of innovative for that time. So that's how I started kind of discovering this. For I call it the small interactions, but actually they don't need to be necessarily small, but small emotional interactions that we put in games. And I think that it makes totally difference when we play these kind of games. But I don't have much time, and I think that the most important thing that I can say today is especially to find your own voice. I can count the many times that people said to me before when I was exploring emotional game design that this was not ridiculous but useless. That I better spend my time learning how to do proper, like complex systems and traditional game design and rational game design in order to become a better professional. But honestly, I hated it. So it was not making me very happy. And I also was very lucky that I could find people that believe in my work and my approach. But I think the best advice is always to find your own voice, because in the end, it matters a lot, and people notice a lot that what uh, you do it passionately if you like it, instead of being another great person that is not gonna stand out in the crowd. I think that it's very important and very privileged to do what you like. So in my case, I finished doing what I like, having jobs that, of course, like probably all of us, that I didn't like or it was not my cup of tea at all, but that helped paying the bills. And at the same time, I improved doing my emotional game design with the hope that that person believing in my skills was going to appear. And that's how I started. And I think that it's especially as I'm Spanish as well, I know how difficult it is to uh, do whatever you want, basically, because I also started with no money. My parents have no money. I needed to ask for a master's loan in the UK in order to do a master's, because in Spain I couldn't remain there since I couldn't pay the studies there. And it's really scary in Spain to ask for any loan. So there was no option for me. So, but in the end, everything worked out luckily. So I guess that follow your gut in a rational way, like logical way, what works for you, it's important. And in the end, I think it pays off. So sometimes earlier and sometimes later, but I think it matters a lot, and for your soul as well. And the last thing, it's experiment. I've said before that I just became a filmmaker, and this is because I wanted to really improve the last year my narrative design skills. Since I'm a game designer, I understood that narrative design was very important for me in order to improve my job, basically. So I asked a friend of mine what could I do for that, and he asked me. He told me that the better thing was writing small scripts for films or tiny pieces. So that's how I started digging. And actually, filmmaking shares with our practice as game designers and game people many things. And I think that sometimes maybe we just don't look enough to films. And we don't take enough elements from other fields that are also really important besides mechanics and systems. So that's how I'm kind of working now, experimenting, taking lots of elements from cinema, from music, from books, from whatever it inspires you, it's gonna be really helpful in the future because yeah, like I think the most important thing is that we feel happy, and that's how it's gonna be all good in the end. So and follow your gut. That's all for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marina. It's a pleasure. And I want to know more about your unannounced project. I know it's hard. It's hard. Perhaps if there is some NDAs or something like that related. But well,
It's actually not NDA, so I can totally take you.
well, but if you are up to me to have something the one, it's okay. No, no.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your point of view, for your career, for the filmmaking relationship between game designing and so on, because I think it gives a huge perspective about what you are doing right now. So, well, I will start with some questions. Some of you have dived into it in your presentation. So I think, well, the first one should be like, it's not easy to think about video games as a vehicle for conveying emotions, since we keep going to back into narratives or similar experiences found in other genres, such as cinema, TV, theater. But however, the interactivity itself is a powerful vehicle through which players enter into the video game. So what do you think? Because Lindsay, for instance, have talked about the players instead of read, that they do in the meantime. So whatever you want, I think you, for instance, Marina was the last one talking about this. If you have anything on mind, or perhaps Audrey, or even Juan, or even Lindsay as well. So feel free. So,
sorry, I think I didn't really get the question.
Yeah, what do you think about conveying emotion if the interactivity itself is a powerful vehicle through which player enter into a video game? What do you think if the players do, or they are playing, as Lindsay was talking in the beginning of this conversation?
All right.
I'll take a shot at this. I have some thoughts. It was really wonderful to hear all of these perspectives and the projects that you're all working on. I was really struck too with what Lindsay was saying about the way that we have to think through the actions, right, and what players are actually doing in a game in order to get at those more interesting emotions that I think we're all interested in, right? And I think it is. I don't have the solution here, right? But I think it is one of the stumbling blocks, or one of the barriers, I think, in a sort of traditional or conventional AAA big budget game design, is this idea that action and like what players are doing always means something really big and kind of constant, right? Like we have to keep the player engaged. We have to make them, the feelings that get, I think, associated with action are always these really big and usually very powerful feelings, rather than taking the risk. And I think this is going to the other question that I think that Juan raised, of like, are players ready to feel other things, right? Are players ready to do small things, or to feel frustrated or bored, or to feel anxious or sad, right? And of course we know that they are, because there are lots of games that already do this. But I still think that that idea of interactivity in mainstream game design tends to be associated with a very narrow set of actions.
In fact, I will talk about escapism, that is always related to play in video games, or to do some actions in video games. No, I think like people associate escapism as a way of playing video games. So I think that should be something that can be related to if players are up to feel emotions through video games.
What I was thinking when I was saying that, if people is prepared, to feel things, of course they are. Like Aubrey say, of course they are. They just the fact of playing, the very act of playing is being prepared to feel things, even if it's killing a dude in Call of Duty 17. I mean, you'll probably feel something, right? But I was trying to focus it on that escapism thing, right? Like because I think I'm tired of playing video games at work. So when I stop working, I kind of want to put my mind at ease and just become like a fucking vegetable in the sofa with a controller. Like I'm talking more about that. Like if the people that buys or games are stressed enough in their lives, maybe they will not want to escape to a world that is again more stressful or is demanding certain emotions that they want to just bury down. Like in my game, you're directly asked questions about your past relationships or current relationships or your perception of love that can be sometimes a bit too much, right? So there's a moment, I think, that after playing the game for I'm gonna spoil it, I'm sorry, well, it came out like 5 years ago, like, come on. You had time. So you've played for like 3 hours or so, asking all, like, answering all these questions about yourself and your partner, and then at the end, there's one big question that is like, do you really love the person you are with right now? Like, do you want to be with that person? That's in case at the beginning you choose that you have a partner currently, but it's like, I can imagine that someone that is stressed in life, it's not always easy to depict love, like Lindsay was saying, to understand it. Even I can understand that people's like, what the fuck with this game? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna not play it. Like, this is too much. I wanna, I've been working for 8 hours. I had a really poorly paid job. I have all the stress in my life, so I don't want to put myself through this. Like, I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, very poorly. But like, is given the conditions that most of the humans in this planet live, are they ready to feel shit while playing games?
Yes.
So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with my earlier creative practice, but it was called critical gameplay. It was explicitly about experimenting with these varieties of game verbs to see whether or not there was an appetite for them, to remind us of all the other verbs we haven't been playing. And one that I think is particularly appropriate here is a game I created, again, 10 plus years ago, called Wait, where you are doing just that. I was frustrated with how many worlds we had to blitz through. And so you're rewarded for waiting and kind of stopping to smell the flowers. So as you move through the world disappears, but the longer you wait, the more the world reveals itself. And you're kind of getting points in the background for seeing flowers and butterflies and all these sorts of things. I think people are definitely ready for it. But I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that we were talking about this yesterday. I'm at Games Learning and Society right now and sitting in a hallway at a hotel. But the short version is we were talking about this notion of researching through design. And ultimately, that's exactly what I was trying to do. And so when I work with my clients in the game studios, when I do things through consulting, I'm reintegrating those concepts, but I'm integrating them to more commercial projects or more projects that are wider. Because I think what we typically do in these sort of design spaces is we take little steps, but we take little steps repeatedly so that eventually AAA and whoever else can kind of catch up. I also feel like that's common in academia. You tell someone something really grand and it takes them 30 years to figure out how that actually applied. And I think there's lots of potential. I think that those baby steps are exactly what we need. And I know it can be frustrating that your game didn't maybe sell or land as well as you hoped, but at the end of the day, it may actually be the thing that matters most to next generation game designers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Marina, I don't know if you have also some words. regarding this?
I think that it's really important to keep developing emotional games and games that are not only emotional, because when I use the term emotional, sometimes people just think that it's games that like intrinsically want you to feel things. I think every game anyway wants you to feel something, but I mean, like, I think emotions are really important for any kind of game. So anything you make, you want the players to feel things, and the more they feel, the more you're gonna be able to make games that are gonna stick to the players for the rest of their lives, perhaps. I think that's what's important with the practice of more kind of emotional game design, or putting more emotions into video games and keep making them, even though sometimes we know that they are not like the most profitable game in the market, but it's important to keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like, regarding this, how the technology should merge within everything that we are talking. I mean, is really necessary for this a high-end technology or not for what we are trying to give the players? What extent might it not be essential? What we are missing?
So I'm going to jump in. I think I've been teaching game design for 12 plus years, and I'm technologically agnostic. I don't actually care about the technology. I care about the intention. I do think that we could find emotion through key presses. I don't need a VR headset to improve emotional experience, but I do think that there are opportunities that we aren't pursuing. And I think every time, I think one of the weaknesses in the industry is there's such a common pattern of chasing the new technology that we actually haven't done everything we could with the old stuff. And that's why you see this sort of revisiting. I love the 8-bit aesthetic, so I'm going to keep creating 8-bit games. It's because there's so much more I could have done with 8-bit that I didn't do. And I think for all of these, what happens is that and it's not to dig on the industry, but it's that they're always chasing the next thing, and we haven't done enough with the old stuff. It's like a kid who hasn't played with all their toys, but they want the newest and latest thing. But that's my own perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone else?
I just want to say that's so interesting, that perspective. Thank you, Lindsay. Really.
Yeah. So do you think that the uncanny valley, for instance, that is a term that everyone knows about the industry, and Unreal Engine 5 is maybe crossing this chasm? So how the affections will be through technology? I know that I'm very agree with Lindsay that I'm also agnostic about technology. It's not something that has to be related with everything, but how are the things going if we cross the uncanny valley or not, and how the affections and emotions should go through that? Come on. I know that you want to talk.
I'm just trying to leave space for other people, so I do have comments, but I want to make sure that like others get to talk.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I totally understood your question. Are you asking about like AI and
yeah, well, not I'm not talking just about the AI or AI.
We lost you. You muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Oh, now I'm back. Now I'm talking about the uncanny valley. It's related to how humans perceive if the animations, bots, something that we have on screen, for instance, is something that we perceive as humans or not, and how the feelings around that is going further.
Well, I mean, I think I'm with Lindsay on this. Like, I think there's a lot of hype around the newest thing, and I think we're getting this just this week with these stories about the Google executives saying that their AI program is sentient. And if you go back into, like, this is the part of my research that's historical, is really thinking about how our theories of emotion since the mid 1940s have always really been associated with ideas about what computers can do, right? And how we can model human emotion through computers. And so this question of artificial intelligence and human emotion has been around and with us for a long time. And one of the key points that many people have been making for decades now, right, is that any sort of artificial intelligence, whether, whatever we want to call it, always has to be combined with some sort of idea or system of emotions, right? Like, you have to have an emotional system that informs any sort of intelligence. So I say all that to say that, like, I actually don't think we're anywhere near any sort of, like we're entering into the uncanny valley. I don't think we're anywhere near having, artificial emotion systems, but that doesn't mean that we don't have art forms, not even just video games, but just art forms for, thousands of years or hundreds of years, I would say, that have figured out how to tap into our emotions and make us feel things that are based on, becoming identified and attached to non-sentient things, right? Like it doesn't need to be hyper realistic, and it doesn't need to be, you don't have to feel like it's a simulation of the real to have your emotions meaningfully explored.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. Lindsay, so you got time right now.
Yeah, so I actually, you said it all, Audrey. I think that the challenge, I think it would be really nice to feel like we have just, we're on the verge of something. I actually feel like we're on no verge. We still have a whole lot more to do. And a lot of our understanding of emotion itself, as designers in games, is not very well formally understood, and we do this all the time in games. We get enough to think we're a subject matter expert, but we're like people who don't understand. I don't know, like someone says they're a pro in Microsoft Access, and I generally go, oh no, you're not. You just know so little, you think you know a lot. And I think this is often what happens in these sort of domains. And it's super academic, right? I feel like I could spend my entire lifetime on one tiny little problem and not know enough. But I do think that that's actually, emotion is so complex, and there's other cultural dimensions. So often when we talk about this in the Western context, we forget that there are other cultures that say, no, I have, this pair of glasses has a soul. And we think about the manufactured items, the games we make, the technology we make very differently by culture. So I think the uncanny valley is a mess in this context, because we keep getting at it from very different spaces. And I really like what Marina was saying about this notion of rational versus emotional. And I think it's that dichotomy that is also problematic. And it's all of my work is always about trying to remind people of the systems that we take for granted that are actually guiding the way we're making our decisions. And I think that this particular question around an uncanny valley for this domain is in itself an assumption of some systems that I think we could also diagnose and say, wait a minute, we'd actually understand the problem a whole lot better if we didn't frame it this way. If we didn't think about going towards some hyper-realistic or lifelike experience of emotion, but instead tapped into the psychology of emotion, which has nothing to do with portrayal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a seeking of the hyper-realistic things, no? The aesthetics are not about the affections or emotions, in fact. So if we talk about virtual reality, because it's I think it's a natural question regarding this, and metaverse, that is the huge war right now everywhere, it's talking about the metaverse. So what are the real possibilities through immersive experiences that we have in the future, not just regarding the technology itself, about the affections. You also talk about the kind of huge video games that you made with a beer, right? So what are the possibilities, the real possibilities that we have in the future, or actually in the present regarding this?
I'll jump in real fast and just say that I love the fact that the metaverse is championed by a social media company, because I actually think that social media is a really good example of how you don't need, you can manipulate people's emotions with a system, and that system is complex and varied, and actually a lot of people are contributing to it. But ultimately, if I open Instagram, I might feel really great for a minute, and I might feel really bad for a minute very quickly, because I'm perceiving the world through Instagram. And so in that way, I always think of it as kind of a version of augmented reality, right? I'm only seeing the best snippets of someone's life, so therefore it's affecting my life. And I think it's really interesting to think about why a company would want to delve further into this, and how the lure of creating a virtual world for me somehow improves the opportunity. Ultimately, I think the cool part is to look at the interactivity that's afforded through wide-scale social media, and how that is shaping emotion and then shaping popular opinion or shaping the world, and how we perceive the world and how it augments the world. So that would be the more interesting question to me around that theme.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Juan?
Also, yeah, I'll say something. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I've been thinking a lot about the metaverse too. The one thing that I would add to that is I think we also need to think about all the companies that are really interested in the metaverse right now. And so as what Lindsay's saying, like what is their interest in this? And in particular, I'm interested in the companies like the game engine companies like Unreal, right? And the way that they want to provide the building blocks for what then we as users of the metaverse will create. And my concern, interest, I guess, is how there will be maybe a kind of reduction of aesthetic diversity, right? And so all the things that we've been talking about how like we still have all these old tools and old technologies that we need to play with. My fear is that there will be a filtering out of those aesthetic possibilities, and that concerns me.
Yeah, perhaps it will be through an NFT, right? And you will purchase your feelings through NFTs in the future instead of it will be we will be able to perceive the world through video games. I think that Lindsay make like an approach to this. So we are doing through the social media, but are we? How are we? I don't know. As society, be able to perceive the world through video games instead of social media. Perhaps metaverse should be perceived as a real video games instead of social media thing, but also Meta is a big company that cannot be taken into account. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
I'll give a 3-word answer about, I think it's actually play is the essential here. We often don't feel like we should be playing with emotion. So I think that's the tension, but I actually think that that's the novelty of any game is it's the psychological and social/sociological products of play or the values of play, right? Like we as human beings need play to explore and understand the world. And so it's interesting to explore and understand emotions through play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, I just want to jump super quick as well. I always wonder why are we so interested in making things like the metaverse instead of improving our actual world where we live? Because I feel that human beings are constantly obsessed with finding other worlds and other stuff instead of making better the world where we actually live. So I think that from my personal voice and perspective, that these companies could do much better investing in improving things in the real world instead of like spending tons of money in a thing that is not tangible. That it's like I think at least almost all of the companies that I've seen interested in the metaverse are kind of having this approach, as Lindsay said before, of kind of controlling or like manipulating people's emotions or feelings, which is actually not good. So I think that I'm not sure if I want these companies to keep developing their concept of metaverse at all.
Thank you, Marina. Juan?
Yeah, I'm a huge ignorant of all the metaverse thing. I just keep wondering, maybe this is like a really simplistic perspective or point, but like, these companies are trying to develop this metaverse or whatever, or at least interested in it. But I think the people that would be interested on those worlds are already in like playing these kind of metaverses anyways, right? Like, you know, there's 1,000 games that I could say that are already, you know, people having fucking lives there, like just having relationships and helping each other or fighting each other. And it's like, I don't see the point. Maybe I'm too naive. I see the point as a you know, as a thing that they will try to put in our lives to sell more stuff to us, or, you know, to, yeah. Uh, but I think, yeah, I think it's already out there. And I think I have issues that maybe Marina, Lindsay, or you, Aubrey, could help me understand, is that who is the audience for the metaverse? Because I know my mom is not playing that, like, and the people that is already interested in interactive things and worlds and whatever is already probably super immersed into a metaverse, being a pirate or being a drug dealer. I don't know.
Yep, but not what a real pirate is. It's about what we, or the companies right now, tells you about what a pirate is. So that's the point. I think. I don't know. What do you think about this?
I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, again, there's just a lot of bluster and hype, and nobody's really quite sure what the metaverse is yet. But the goal right now is to imagine a different way of monetizing the internet. Honestly, I think that's cool. I think they're imagining they're going to use the building blocks of game engines and virtual reality to capture attention for everyone in different ways, so that, you know, we won't just go onto Facebook as a website. We will go into Facebook, and, you know, that's where we'll talk to grandma, right? So that's, I think, what they're imagining. I think, to bring this back to emotion, right, is like that could be really interesting. I think it could also be a disaster, right? And I think we'll also always still need forms of art that are a kind of counterpoint to that take us away from those kind of bad feelings of social media, and allow us to either play by ourselves. That's another thing I'm really interested in, like not being social in games, right? Like going into a game to actually be alone with the game, or to be social through some kind of fantasy space. Right now, I don't think the metaverse is really, I don't think the people who are behind it are really even interested in thinking about it that way. I think they're interested in a new economic structure for the internet.
Yeah, monetizing, as you mentioned. Yeah, that's it. Lindsay, Marina?
My answer is, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, don't worry. Okay, just gonna say real quick that I really don't understand so much kind of the super hype, because I, like, before we already had Second Life, we had Imbu, other tons of games that were exploring this, and at the end of the day, it's all about kind of what I just said already, monetizing. And yeah, that's kind of the whole point, right? So I really don't understand the hassle, but I think it's good that we keep exploring that. And I think, like, from my perspective, things like new technologies, like, I don't know, the metaverse or like virtual reality, I think could be super useful for things like, for example, therapy and new approaches to help people. I think that could be super cool to use it for.
Okay, Lindsay.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's obvious. It's basically a play for a platform that can be more easily controlled, and that can afford for a new space to own, right? So I liked that there's this sort of question about why would we build this, and I think in some ways it's the same question as to why we would try to go to Mars when we can't fix this planet. And it's just a sort of like, I need a new, like maybe it's human nature, maybe it's just capitalism, but it's that you need a new space to conquer. And when you don't have new spaces to conquer, when you've mapped the world, you start making other worlds. And I think you start making other worlds because you can sell those worlds, or because you can control them in ways you can't control this one. Which I think is I think it's a certain personality that wants to control worlds, it's a certain personality that wants to do that kind of work. And I think the absurdity to many of us is a product of where our values are.
Thank you, thank you. So, well, it will be like my last question for this. So I will go back to the beginning of this panel. How can we go beyond experience and relationship between traditional control and human emotions? And with this, I think that we make like the golden circle and go back to the beginning of this panel. Who wants to start?
I'll give some real quick thoughts. Generally, I think that one of the most important things is to stop perceiving these relationships as binary. And it's always ironic in a digital context to say, don't perceive them as binary, because we know we're ultimately, but I think that, I talk about this at various times. One of the fundamental challenges that we have in trying, perhaps as designers generally, is that we keep trying to find sort of dichotomies where dichotomies don't exist. I sometimes joke about, gee, if we were all not bilaterally symmetrical, if we didn't have a right side and a left side and we were starfish or something, we might actually have better designs, because they'd be wider, inclusive designs that actually understand a problem as an intersection of a bunch of different areas. And so I think the big thing to bring it back is that when we start to say that there is either emotional content or there isn't, or there is, we either did it or we didn't, as opposed to, no, we moved the needle in a way that if I did it 16 more times, you'd actually be emotionally affected. I think that's the key, is to stop looking at them as sort of binary relationships and dichotomies.
Sorry, thank you, Lindsay. Anyone else? This is the last question, so feel free. If it's something that we didn't cover or was not talked and you want to mention, now is time for it.
Sorry, Sergio, there was a specific question, because I got lost a bit.
Oh yeah, no, well, but the specific question is, well, it's more related to if we are, how can we go beyond the experience and the relationship between traditional control and human emotions?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good question to finish.
Damn. Okay, someone wants to go first.
Audrey.
Smarter than me.
Yeah, I'll say something briefly. I feel like it's just a variation of what I have already been saying, and a kind of a variation of what Lindsay just said, but that, I guess, I'm very eager for us as you as game designers and us as sort of game scholars and critics to be able to always understand that there is this imbrication between the systems that we design and the systems that we're using and how we feel, that they're not, these like separate categories, and that is true of emotion outside of computational systems too, that these things are, it's not a binary, it's not artificial and authentic, it's not we're escaping something in the game and then there's real life, like all of this stuff kind of bleeds together, and that's what's really powerful about video games, and that we should embrace that. And it's also what can make games really screwed up too sometimes, right? And that we can't be naive about games only having positive social impacts, right? If games can have positive social impacts, they can have negative social impacts too, right? Like both of these are equally possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Juan, did you have time to think about this?
Not really, I was paying attention. I don't know, man, like, I feel like, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I can say something. It's probably not related. I don't feel like I feel like I bring that much to that subject specifically, and I think that's okay with me. That's okay for me, if that's okay for you. But I wanted to say something that I'm sorry to kind of interrupt the flow of it, but earlier you said something about can we perceive reality through games or something like that, I think, at some point. And there's something that I think it needs to, I mean, it has to do with emotions, is that I feel very pissed about the fact that we get little games from outside the Western world. You know, I think we cannot perceive reality or true emotion through games until we have enough representation of other cultures. You know, Lindsay just said, like, you know, this classes here might have a soul for, you know, a culture, and it's like, well, I think I haven't seen that in a game, like never. Like, you know, I've seen 1,000 games. I see games every day, and you know, like last week we got this E3 thing, right? And I was just counting the amount of studios that were not from, you know, Spain, Sweden, Netherlands, United States, Canada, and France, and you know, like the biggest countries in the industry. And I think we're missing that. We're missing like emotion to, like, a huge part of the world communicating through games and understanding emotions from all the corners of the world. And I think we as a media won't be complete until everyone has a voice, right? And I think this is a really empty message. I just wanted to put it out there because I've been thinking about it for the last 10 minutes. So yeah, we have some homework, I guess.
Yep. I think so, Juan. You have a good point, and I think everyone.
A bit related. I'm sorry. I just yeah, I cannot keep up. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
sorry.
Marina,
It's a really important point.
yeah, absolutely. Marina, I think that's
yeah.
your last intervention. So, and we will be closing this because we are just running out of time. We have 3 minutes. So
This is a good opportunity. I want to mention related to what Juan was just saying, that I think this is really important what he said, and it's a good opportunity for me to quote one of my favorite game scholars in the world, that is Anthropy, and her book is called The Rise of the Video Game Scientists, and I also recommend to all the students that are watching us right now because it's an amazing game and it's an amazing book, sorry, and it's a really good approach. And the important thing that she says is that thanks to all the people that are not kind of traditional game designers or game developers making games out there, is how we are going beyond with emotions, because as Juan said, like, there is not only one perspective on emotion, and traditionally has been the Western one, but there are so many people that feel in different ways because different cultures feel in different ways, and the symbols, the symbology around emotions is completely different. So I think like the democracy of the tools and the possibility of lots of different people to make games is what is going to push emotions and the games industry forward. And that's it.
okay, so well, we're run out of time. As I told, thank you so much for your time, for your thoughts, for your experience. I think we have many things. We have homeworks, as one said, and that's the best part, because everything that reminds you thinking about any topic, it will be someone, or there will be something that we have to do in the future. So I'm blessed to be here to share this time with you, and I hope to have time in the future to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, really, Audrey. Aubrey, Juan, Lindsay, and Marina, was a blast. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
really.
you. Thank
So
you,
much.
Sergio. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Very much.